Welcome to this brief presentation on the experiences of international students in Canada. My name is Dr. Abu Kamara, and I'll be presenting information from a paper titled International Students and the Presentation of Self Across Cultures, published in the Journal of International Students. Before I move on, I'd like to give you some information uh, about the international education landscape in Canada. Currently, Canada is the seventh most popular destination for international students in the world. We have about 353,000 international students studying at different levels in Canada, and there are plans to increase this number by to 450,000 by 2022. Some of the countries that are fueling the growth to the international student population are the United States, China, India, Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, amongst others. Between 2008 and 2015, the international student population increased an estimated 92%. It's the fastest growing international student population from data collected between 2014 and 2015 from India, Nigeria, China, Vietnam, Brazil, France, South Korea, and Japan. Some of the most common reasons why international students choose to study in Canada include affordable education, reputation for tolerance, safety, international student-friendly immigration policies, easy pathway to citizenship following graduation, and a growing recruitment and support infrastructures at the university level. Purpose of this research: the majority of research continues to focus almost entirely on the experiences of international students in Ontario, British Columbia, and Quebec. Therefore, there is a need to include the experiences of students who are from non-traditional receiving provinces in Canada. Nova Scotia, for example, the site of this research, has increased its undergraduate international student population by 138% and its graduate international student population by 101% in the last decade. Therefore, the purpose of the study was to really explore the experiences, the learning and living experiences of international students in Canada, a province, as I mentioned, that's increased dramatically its effort to attract and retain international students. The methods, data from the paper, from this paper, comes from a qualitative dissertation study that investigated the living experiences, as I mentioned, of 31 full-time undergraduates and graduate students in Halifax, the largest city in Nova Scotia. Students enrolled in undergraduate and graduate programs in the faculties of business, social sciences, arts, engineering, computer science from 3 different universities were recruited through emails, posters, and snowball sampling. The sample size included 17 males and 14 female graduates and graduate students from 17 different countries. Participants were asked to reflect on their living and learning experiences in Canada over the course of semi-structured, open-ended personal interviews that averaged between 30 and 70 minutes. Interviews were recorded with a digital audio recorder and later transcribed, coded, and analyzed for emerging themes. Some of the key findings from this project: language competency issues affect students' self-presentation. Students use the language of comparison and contrast and space and time not only to circumvent language barriers, but also to open up discursive spaces for their self-presentation. The rules and procedures that govern social supports and academic spaces can limit students' self-presentation. Students regard social, academic support spaces not only as important opportunities for learning and accessing support, but also as stages for expressing their identities. Students have a strong desire to present and manage their identities across cultural lines. Negative readings of students' bodies stemming from racism, acts of racial microaggression can undermine or diminish their ability to present their preferred identities across cultural lines. Markers such as mental illness, language deficiency, while typical of support language, affix meanings to students' bodies that can limit students' ability to present their identities and navigate social and academic spaces. Use of expert knowledge or expertise to impose an obligation of confession and to negatively mark support seeking bodies can limit students' abilities to manage how they're perceived by peers, faculty, staff, and community members. Students have a strong desire to present and manage their identities across cultures. There's an ongoing need to recognize that social support, academic interactions also double as stages for self presentation. While language competency issues limit students' self presentation, some students are able to circumvent some of the barriers by economizing their language use. For example, by comparing current perceptions or of their identity, often the less ideal or troubled identity, with an ideal identity, students can successfully use the language of comparison, contrast, and space and time, not only to open up new discursive avenues for self presentation, but also to regain the ability to manage how their identities are perceived. The language of comparison and contrast allows students to express some version of their preferred identity. It allows them to insert the idea that current perceptions do not necessarily capture their ideal identity, in essence, to say, I am more than what you perceive. Use of the language of space and time creates distance and differentiate between the ideal and troubled identity. Moreover, it allows students to regain, if only temporarily, the ability to manage how they're perceived. In conclusion, students do not leave their identities behind when they enter and they cross boundaries. They bring those identities with them, along with the need and the desire to present their identity, and also for their identities to be recognized by others. Many thanks for joining me on this presentation. If you have further questions or desires to find out more, please pursue and find and read this paper.